Alright, so rotary tools, rotary bits. There's different hand pieces. You'll find which one you like the best. Basically, you have a few different kinds here, and I got a few more over here. So you've got your sanding wheels, and there's usually a couple grits. But here's a fine grit, and then there's a rougher grit, and then there's a more medium grit. And this one's got a guard on it because use it for the animal's claws, which is really nice. They don't mind the sandpaper wheels. So you got your basic stones, and the stones are really good for grinding metal, sharpening knives, cutting blades, that type stuff. And there's a couple different shapes. It depends what you're using them for. I like the larger stones. They last a bit longer, and they stay sharp, I guess you could say. So like this one, as you can see, I've got a bunch of metal on it here. So I'll go ahead and clean it, and it's pretty easy to clean it, and you get a little thing to clean it with, but I don't know. They don't ever tell you that that's what it's for, I guess. I don't really know. Go ahead and chuck this in here. Alright. So you get these little stones, and all you have to do is just spin it up and just briefly grind on there for a second, and it takes off all the metal or whatever that was on there before. So you can do that, and as it loads up, just keep doing it, and if you do it fairly often, you'll keep it pretty clean. So these are great for doing beveled edges, the conical shaped ones. If you need to grind inside of somewhere like this, you can go ahead and hollow out the burrs. And then of course you've got all kinds of these little stones. These are all good for doing aluminum. You can even do tool steel with them, but don't expect them to last too long if you do tool steel. So you can also get ceramic stones, and those are real good for using on harder materials. They're real fine, so they work great on doing soft metals, jewelry. These are just more general purpose, and these are a lot more durable. They last a really long time. So those are the stones, and the shapes are whatever you need. The main one is going to be the conical and the round. So then you have file bits, and these have little teeth on them like a file. These are pretty much only good for wood and maybe like synthetic material that you can cut into really easily, like porcelain, or not porcelain, plaster of Paris, that kind of stuff. If you use it on anything hard, these teeth will just get wrecked. But for wood, these will remove a lot of material really quick. Then you have the carbide bits, and these are probably my favorite. They're pretty cheap. You can buy a whole set, I think, of like 8 or 10 for a couple dollars on eBay, full carbide bits. So you've got the cylindrical, and then there's some pointed ones. You have to be very careful using these pointed ones. They wear pretty fast. If you are sticking these in a hole and you want to enlarge the hole and you get the whole bit in there, it will jam it up and it will just wreck the teeth. So you want to kind of ease it around the edges to slowly open it up. And you've got round tip, and there's the ball. It's just for getting into different angles. They all have pretty much the same cutting capacity. Then you have these. You always get these with the Dremel kits. These are the really cheesy high-speed steel cutting bits, and they work okay for drilling holes, but that's about it. This one is so small you can almost not use it for anything. These work okay on plastics, maybe aluminum and copper, but if you try to do anything harder than that, these are going to get wrecked. The carbide ones, you can pretty much use these on anything. You can abuse them. It's really, really durable. So I do plastic, wood, metal, tool steel. It doesn't matter. Just make sure you use oil, some kind of oil. And I use this glass cutter oil, and it works fine. But there's plenty of other kinds of oils you can use. it just makes it so the bit dissipates the heat and it doesn't wear as fast. So then there's these buffing wheels, and these are pretty much useless unless you're doing a really, really small piece, like a ring or something like that. So you get the conical ones and go inside the ring, and then you got the larger ones. I would suggest using a bench buffer over these because these wear really fast, and they do an okay job, but it takes forever. So why waste your time? So then you've got the cutoff wheels, and these are the cheap kinds. The cheap cutoff wheels look like, let's see here. Here we go. You got two kinds. You've got the red ones, which is a finer grit, and then you've got the black ones, which are a rougher grit, but these are also more durable and they're thicker. Now, you often find these in the knockoff Dremel kits. The Dremel ones are pretty much the same thing. They're all pretty crappy, but they do get the job done. So you want to make sure that you use oil. So just put cutting oil on the disc, and the disc will last like 10 times longer. Just because of that, you'll be able to go all the way through. If you hit these at an angle or you push on it from the side of the disc, it will break. You got to be careful using these. I know a lot of people don't care, but you should use a face shield. I have this. This is my face shield, and easy to put on. You just drop it on over your head. It's like a hat. You can't go wrong with that, and you're pretty protected. These can break, and since they're spinning and they're rotating down, the top side comes up towards you. So if it breaks and this ricochets off of something, you can have these little shards and get stuck in your skin or whatever. So that's pretty bad. Anyhow, to prevent them from breaking, you want a chuck that is very true. So like this one right here. This is a Foredom chuck handpiece. This is a 30, and when I run this, it runs pretty true. It doesn't wobble or anything. It's pretty clean moving. If I put this in my super cheap Dremel Chinese knockoff style, the Dremel's the same basic thing. It's not a very accurate tool. You can see it's also a million times louder because they're little tiny motors at enormous RPMs and fairly cheap. I'll go ahead and take this off here. Yeah, this is a collet. Make sure you always leave something in the collet. It prevents the collets from getting uneven wear. When you store them, they might get a little crooked, so just keeping something in them all the time is a very good thing to do. Alright. So as you can see, this kind of isn't very true at all. When it's spinning slow, it wobbles a lot because it's a cheap piece of shit handpiece. And that makes these discs break all the goddamn time. So get a decent handpiece. Even if you have a cheap shit Dremel or Chinese motor, you can get one of these handpieces with the flex shaft for that system for probably $20, $30 on eBay, and that will improve your performance on anything that you do by like tenfold at least. So the handpiece matters when you're using these bits a lot. You'll go through these way too fast if you have a bad handpiece. Take this out. And these break so easily that even sometimes taking them out, they break, or resting them on the table. Alright, and yeah, I should put something back in there to keep the collet straight. Alright. I do like the Dremel style because it's very flexible and it's very easy in the hand. It doesn't weigh anything. It's plastic. But the Foredom's like twice the thickness, and you get half the maneuverability. And it's a good weight there, so it's a little bit harder to use. And you can get different handpieces, like get this one. This is the 28, I think. It's similar in size, but you still have the weight of the shaft there, and that does weigh a lot. So you can definitely feel the difference from the weight. This one is almost nothing, so for light tasks, and you don't mind the noise, the Dremel style is good. But if you want precision and you want power, then the Foredom is the way to go, and it's so much quieter. Anyway, and you can use a variable speed control on both of them. That's what I've got set up. All right, then you have these are wire wheels, so you can remove debris from metals, and they last a reasonable amount of time. The brass one is if you want to remove it from like copper and aluminum and softer metals. This won't destroy them as quickly. That's what the brass is for. Then you've got your diamond type tools, and they give you a whole bunch when you buy the kits because they cost almost nothing, but I usually use these cylindrical ones. These are great on glass and ceramics and really hard material. So if you need to make a small modification to like some tool steel, these will get the job done. It might wreck the bit after a few times, but these are pretty much throwaways anyways. I mean, you can get a whole pack like this for like a couple dollars. I would suggest getting the largest diameter of these you can get. These are all 1/8 bits, but you can get 1/8 to 1/4 on the ends, and those last a reasonable amount of time. Again, if you use oil, they'll last longer when they cut, but for ceramic and glass, that's pretty good. Then you got your drill bits, and these are all stuck together with a magnet because I kept losing them. So there's these 2 fluted bits. These are really good if you want to cut precise holes. And the way that it works is there's 2 flutes. They're very small on the tips, and then they taper, so they cut a countersink, and then they'll cut to the full length. For starting holes, you really can't beat these because they don't walk at all. And these are, I think these are 8% cobalt bits, and they're fairly cheap. They're like $1 or $2 each. And you get double sides, so once we wear down one side, you can always sharpen it or use the other side. Then you have the standard cobalt infused high-speed steel. I think these are 4%. They have like a golden shine to them. That's how you can tell what they are. They're not indestructible. I mean, these are just your typical twist bits. These are plenty good for drilling into soft materials. Then you have your finer pin vise style, and these are good for doing like you can do soft materials, plastics, wood. You got to go slow. They're so fine. I mean, it's like a needle or smaller than a paper clip, like half the size of a paper clip. And these go all the way down to like, I don't know, 0.1 millimeters or something like that. And if you use this can't do it because this is 1/8. But if I put these in the Foredom 30 and I use the drill press attachment, or I use like a clamp, then I can get the holes drilled well. If I try to do it by hand, sometimes the bits bend and they can break, so you have to be real careful. And these are just your generic, you know, cheap high-speed steel bits. It's like $1 for 20 or 30 of these things. So they're pretty disposable. But if you treat them well, they'll last a long time. And again, use oil. So if you want to drill pearls or whatever, these will last a really long time. If you need to drill harder materials, you need to get the cobalt bits. Like these 2 fluted ones work good. If you're going to drill glass or ceramics, again, use the diamonds, and the burrs work the best. So you use these like circular burrs. Those go into ceramics and they don't make a mess. Same with glass. You can drill holes in glass pretty easily with these. If you didn't do glass and ceramics, I would suggest putting them in a little pool of water and just drilling directly into the pool of water, because they make so much more heat than metal. It's gonna wear the bits way too quick. And then that's about it for the bits. There are the angle grinder type attachments, and you got the sandpaper. This is a roll lock. This is a nice little attachment. I would recommend this, but I wouldn't waste money on the handpiece. I would just do what I did, and I got a cheap Chinese handpiece and just modified it to fit in there, since basically all it's doing is just spinning this one piece, and I don't even need to worry about changing it. And they're plenty true, so you get the roll lock. And these are just some buffing wheels I made, and these work reasonably well. This is just this is the easiest method I found, is to just cut out these, punch a hole through the middle with a punch, and then staple them together. It doesn't take no time to make them, and they last a really long time. Just use cloth, cotton. So then I used these briefly. These are the diamond discs, and they work pretty good for cutting ceramics and glass. As long as you use oil and go slow, these do just fine. And in the angle grinder, they don't actually fit by default, so I had to take a carbide bit and just open up the inside there, and it doesn't take too long. You could use a stepper bit, but I would recommend against just using a stepper bit, because when you put it in, it kind of, each time you do it, it racks it a little bit, and it's hard to keep these that centered. It doesn't need to be perfectly centered, so I just go around it with a carbide bit until it opens up. And then I use just make a little washer out of some piece of rubber or plastic, something that's somewhat malleable, so that when you put this on the arbor to mount it, it fills in that space. And these work good on the angle grinder too, and it's a little safer. You have the guard there, and you have the weight of the tool and the extra torque to really go in there and hold it steady. I mean, you can, for sure, you can use this on the on the handpiece, and it's pretty ridiculous. I mean, definitely make sure you're wearing a face shield when you're using these things, because who knows if this is going to break or whatever. And it'll cut, but I don't like doing that. It doesn't feel too safe. It's much easier using the angle grinder to cut. So then you've got Velcro mount pads, and again, you can make your own real easily. Just you can just glue some polyester onto it, and it'll stick to this. On a normal belt sander paper, or even normal sanding paper will work. It just won't be as durable. And these the row lock scouring pads, and again, you can make these out of Scotch-Brite really easily. That's basically all they are, and they cost nothing. And then these ones, I don't use these, I don't wood carve, but it's a flap wheel. And you can make these really easily too. Just cut out a circular piece of wood with a hole saw, and then you can just glue the flaps on and put a hole through the middle with a drill press. So, I mean, you don't have to buy all these little tools. You can make your own or buy the cheap ones and modify it fairly easy. If you're trying to find 2-inch or 1.5-inch wheels, you're never going to find them, or they're going to cost a couple dollars each. So, there's some things to think about.